My neighbor has been letting his dog use my front yard as a toilet for months. When I installed security cameras and confronted him with video evidence, he screamed that I'm violating his privacy. Hey everyone, I'm here to share what has to be the most infuriating and bizarre neighbor dispute I've ever experienced. This is the story of how my entitled neighbor turned my beautiful front yard into his dog's personal bathroom for months, and then had the audacity to claim I was violating his privacy when I finally caught him on camera. My name is Marcus, and I live in a quiet suburban neighborhood in Phoenix, Arizona. I've been in my house for about 3 years now, and up until recently, I thought I'd found the perfect place to settle down. Well, let me tell you how one inconsiderate neighbor and his massive German shepherd nearly drove me to the breaking point. The perfect neighborhood. When I first moved to Maple Street, it seemed like a dream come true. Tree-lined streets, well-maintained houses, friendly neighbors who actually waved when you drove by. I'm a software developer who works from home, so having a peaceful environment was crucial for my productivity and sanity. I spent my first summer transforming my front yard into something I could be proud of. I'm talking about a complete landscaping overhaul, new sod, flower beds, decorative stones, and even a small Japanese maple tree that cost me $400. I put in probably 60 hours of work and spent close to $2,000 making that yard absolutely perfect. The neighbors seemed to appreciate my efforts. Mrs. Johnson from across the street complimented my gardening skills, and the elderly couple next door, the Hendersons, said it was the nicest yard on the block. I was genuinely proud of what I'd accomplished. That first year was blissful. I'd sit on my front porch in the evenings with my coffee, admiring my handiwork, and feeling like I'd really found my place in the world. Then Kevin moved in next door. Meet Kevin. Kevin Hartwell is a 45-year-old divorced guy who moved into the house next to mine about 2 years ago. He works as a sales manager for some automotive company and has that typical loud, obnoxious personality that you'd expect from someone in aggressive sales. But Kevin's most notable feature isn't his personality, it's his dog, Brutus. Brutus is a massive German shepherd, probably 90 pounds of pure muscle and attitude. Don't get me wrong, I love dogs. I grew up with them. But Brutus is clearly not well trained, and Kevin seems to think that's everyone else's problem, not his. From day one, Kevin made it clear that he saw the neighborhood as his personal domain. He'd park his truck across 2 spaces at the community mailbox area, leave his garbage cans out for days after pickup, and play music loud enough to rattle windows until well past midnight on weeknights. But none of that prepared me for what was about to happen to my beautiful front yard. The problem begins. It started subtly about 8 months ago. I'd be working in my home office, which has a window facing the front yard, and I'd catch glimpses of Kevin walking Brutus past my house. Normal enough, people walk their dogs. That's what responsible pet owners do. Except Kevin wasn't being responsible. At first, I thought I was imagining things. I'd see Kevin stop in front of my yard, and Brutus would wander onto my grass. Kevin would be looking at his phone, seemingly oblivious to what his dog was doing. Then they'd continue on their walk. The first time I found dog poop in my yard, I figured it was just an accident. Maybe Kevin didn't notice, or maybe he forgot to bring cleanup bags. These things happen, right? I cleaned it up myself and didn't think much of it. But then it happened again, and again, and again. Within 2 weeks, I was finding dog waste in my yard almost daily. Not just small amounts, either. We're talking about massive deposits from a 90-pound dog that clearly had no trouble making himself at home on my property. The confrontation attempt. After the 10th pile of dog waste appeared in my yard, I decided I needed to have a friendly conversation with Kevin. I caught him one evening as he was coming home from work. "Hey, Kevin, can I talk to you for a minute?" He looked annoyed already. "What's up?" "I've been finding dog waste in my yard pretty regularly, and I'm wondering if maybe Brutus is getting away from you during walks. I'm not trying to be difficult, but I put a lot of work into my lawn and—" Kevin cut me off. "Are you accusing my dog of something?" "I'm not accusing anyone of anything. I'm just asking if you could maybe keep an eye on him when you walk past my house." "Look, Marcus, dogs are going to do what dogs do. If you don't want to deal with nature, maybe you should move to a condo." I was stunned by his dismissive attitude. "Kevin, I'm just asking you to clean up after your dog if he uses my yard as a bathroom." "I don't know for sure it's my dog. There are lots of dogs in this neighborhood." That was clearly a lie. Brutus was by far the largest dog on our street, and the size of the deposits left no doubt about their source. "Could you at least try to pay attention during walks and maybe bring cleanup bags?" Kevin shrugged. "I'll keep an eye out, but I can't control what my dog does every second." I walked away from that conversation feeling frustrated, but hoping that at least bringing it to his attention would help. It didn't help. If anything, it got worse. The escalation. Over the next month, the situation escalated dramatically. Not only was Kevin still letting Brutus use my yard as a toilet, but now it seemed almost intentional. I'd find waste right in the middle of my flower beds, on my decorative stones, and even near my front door. One morning, I found that Brutus had apparently spent some quality time digging in my mulch beds, destroying about $100 worth of plants I'd just installed. When I looked closer, I could see paw prints and, well, let's just say he'd made himself very comfortable in my landscaping. I tried talking to Kevin again, this time with photo evidence of the damage. "Kevin, look what happened to my flower bed. Your dog tore up my plants and left a mess right in the middle of my landscaping." He barely glanced at the photos. "How do you know it was my dog?" "Because I can see his paw prints, and he's literally the only dog big enough to cause this kind of damage. Could have been any dog, maybe a raccoon or something." I was starting to realize that Kevin had no intention of being reasonable about this situation. "Kevin, I'm asking you nicely to please keep your dog on your own property or clean up after him. I shouldn't have to deal with this every day." "Listen, Marcus, I pay my mortgage just like you do. I have every right to walk my dog on this street, and if nature calls, that's not my problem. But it is your problem when your dog destroys my property." Kevin got defensive and aggressive. "Are you threatening me? Because if you're threatening me, we can take this up with the homeowners association." I wasn't threatening anyone. I was just asking for basic courtesy. But Kevin clearly saw any request for responsibility as a personal attack. The daily nightmare. After that second conversation, the situation became absolutely ridiculous. Kevin seemed to be making a point of stopping directly in front of my house during every walk. I'd watch from my window as he'd stand there, scrolling through his phone, while Brutus wandered all over my yard doing his business. Some mornings, I'd find 3 or 4 piles of waste scattered across my lawn. My beautiful grass was getting damaged from the constant contamination, and the smell was becoming noticeable even from inside my house. The worst part was that Kevin would sometimes walk Brutus multiple times per day, early morning, afternoon, and evening. Each walk included a stop at my yard, and each stop resulted in more mess for me to clean up. I was spending 20–30 minutes every morning walking around my yard with a shovel and garbage bags, cleaning up after someone else's pet. It was humiliating, disgusting, and infuriating. I tried everything I could think of to discourage this behavior. I put up small, private property signs, which Kevin ignored. I installed motion-activated sprinklers, which Kevin complained about to the HOA. I even tried organic dog repellent spray, which had zero effect on Brutus. Nothing worked. Kevin was determined to let his dog use my yard as a bathroom, and he clearly didn't care about the impact on me or my property. The breaking point. The absolute final straw came on a Saturday morning in early November. I was having my parents over for brunch, and I wanted my yard to look perfect. I'd spent Friday evening cleaning up all the dog waste and making sure everything was pristine. Saturday morning, I looked outside and saw the most infuriating sight imaginable. Kevin was standing in my driveway, on his phone, while Brutus was not only relieving himself in my flower bed, but also digging up the bulbs I'd planted for spring. When I went outside to confront them, Kevin had the audacity to act like nothing was happening. "Kevin, get your dog out of my flower bed right now." "Relax, Marcus. He's just being a dog." "He's destroying my property. And you're standing in my driveway." "It's a public sidewalk. I can stand wherever I want." "That's not the sidewalk. That's my driveway." Kevin looked around like he was just noticing where he was standing. "Whatever, man. We're almost done here." Almost done? Like he was giving me a timeline for when his dog would finish destroying my landscaping? That's when I made the decision that would change everything. I was going to get evidence of exactly what Kevin was doing, and I was going to make sure he couldn't deny it anymore. The security camera solution. That afternoon, I went to the electronics store and bought a complete home security system. I'm talking about professional-grade cameras with night vision, motion detection, and cloud storage. I spent $800 on equipment, but at that point, I would have spent $8,000 if it meant solving this problem. I installed cameras covering every angle of my front yard and driveway. The main camera was positioned to capture the sidewalk area where Kevin typically stopped, and I made sure to include timestamp and date information on all recordings. I also researched the local laws about recording on your own property. In Arizona, you have every right to record anything that happens on your own land, including areas visible from public spaces. I made sure I was completely within my legal rights. The cameras were up and running by Sunday evening, and I didn't have to wait long for results. The evidence accumulates. Within the first week, I had captured dozens of videos of Kevin allowing Brutus to use my yard as a toilet. We're talking about clear, high-definition footage of Kevin standing there, watching his dog, and making no effort to clean up or prevent the behavior. Some of the videos were particularly damning. Kevin holding waste bags in his hand while watching Brutus poop in my flower bed, then walking away without cleaning up. Kevin actually directing Brutus toward my yard when the dog started to go on the sidewalk. Kevin standing in my driveway for over 5 minutes while Brutus systematically destroyed my landscaping. Kevin allowing Brutus to urinate on my decorative stones and newly planted shrubs. The timestamp data showed that this was happening multiple times per day, sometimes as early as 6 a.m. and as late as 10 p.m. Kevin was basically using my property as his dog's personal bathroom facility. But the most infuriating video came during the second week of recording. I captured Kevin actually encouraging Brutus to go in my yard. You can hear him on the audio saying, "Go ahead, boy, do your business," while pointing toward my flower bed. That video made it crystal clear that this wasn't accidental or unavoidable. Kevin was deliberately allowing and encouraging his dog to use my property as a toilet. The confrontation. After 2 weeks of collecting evidence, I had more than enough footage to prove exactly what was happening. I decided it was time to confront Kevin with undeniable proof of his behavior. I caught him on a Tuesday evening as he was bringing Brutus back from their walk, a walk that had, predictably, included a stop in my yard. "Kevin, I need to talk to you about your dog." He rolled his eyes. "What now, Marcus?" "I've been recording everything that happens in my yard for the past 2 weeks, and I have clear video evidence of you allowing Brutus to use my property as a bathroom." Kevin's expression changed immediately. "What do you mean, recording?" "I installed security cameras, and I have dozens of videos of you standing there while your dog damages my landscaping and leaves waste all over my yard." "You can't record me." "Actually, I can. I'm recording my own property, and everything you're doing is clearly visible from my house." Kevin was getting agitated. "That's invasion of privacy. Privacy? You're doing this in full view of the entire neighborhood." I pulled out my phone and showed him one of the clearest videos. Kevin standing in my driveway while Brutus dug up my flower bed. "This is you yesterday morning, watching your dog destroy my property." Kevin watched the video with a shocked expression, like he couldn't believe he'd been caught. "You had no right to record me without my permission." "I have every right to record what happens on my own property. And this video shows you allowing your dog to damage my landscaping." The meltdown. What happened next was absolutely incredible. Instead of being embarrassed or apologetic about his behavior, Kevin completely lost his mind about being recorded. "You're violating my privacy!" he screamed loud enough for the whole neighborhood to hear. "Kevin, you're standing in my driveway. There's no expectation of privacy when you're on someone else's property. I'm going to sue you for recording me without consent." "Go ahead. I'm recording my own property, which is completely legal." Kevin was turning red in the face. "You're some kind of pervert watching me with cameras. I'm watching my yard because your dog has been using it as a toilet for months. I don't care what you think you saw. You can't record people without their permission." At this point, several neighbors had come outside to see what the shouting was about. Kevin was making such a scene that Mrs. Johnson from across the street called out to ask if everything was okay. "This maniac has been secretly recording me," Kevin yelled to anyone who would listen. I tried to explain the situation calmly. "I installed security cameras on my property because Kevin's dog has been using my yard as a bathroom for months, and he refuses to clean up after it." Mrs. Johnson nodded knowingly. "I've seen that dog in your yard, Marcus. I wondered when you were going to do something about it." That just made Kevin angrier. "You're all ganging up on me. I have rights." "You have the right to keep your dog on your own property," I replied. "I'm calling the police," Kevin shouted. "This is harassment." "Please do," I said. "I'd love to show them the videos." The police visit. Kevin did call the police, and 2 officers showed up about an hour later. I have to admit, I was a little nervous about how this would go, but I had all my evidence ready. Officer Martinez was the lead officer, and he listened patiently as Kevin explained his version of events. "This neighbor has been secretly recording me for weeks without my permission. He's invaded my privacy and is harassing me." Then it was my turn to explain. I showed the officers my security cameras and explained that they were positioned to monitor my own property. "I installed these cameras because Mr. Hartwell's dog has been using my yard as a bathroom for months, and he refuses to clean up after it or keep the dog on his own property." Officer Martinez asked to see some of the video evidence, so I showed him several of the clearest recordings on my phone. "This shows Mr. Hartwell standing in my driveway, while his dog damages my landscaping and leaves waste in my flower beds." The officer watched several videos, including the one where you can hear Kevin encouraging Brutus to do his business in my yard. After reviewing the evidence, Officer Martinez turned to Kevin. "Sir, these cameras are on his property, monitoring his property. He has every right to record what happens on his own land." "But he's recording me without my permission." "You're on his property, sir. There's no expectation of privacy when you're standing in someone else's driveway." The officer then addressed the main issue. "Mr. Hartwell, your neighbor has provided clear evidence that you're allowing your dog to damage his property and not cleaning up after it. This is actually a violation of city ordinances." Kevin looked shocked. "What ordinances?" "Phoenix City Code requires pet owners to immediately remove any waste left by their animals on public or private property that isn't their own. The fine is $200 for the first offense." I had no idea there was actually a law about this, but I was thrilled to learn it. "Are you going to fine him?" I asked. Officer Martinez looked at the video evidence again. "Based on what I've seen here, yes. Mr. Hartwell, you're being cited for failure to clean up pet waste." Kevin was furious. "This is ridiculous. I'm being punished for walking my dog." "You're being cited for allowing your dog to damage private property and not cleaning up after it," the officer corrected. The aftermath: the police citation was a $200 fine, but more importantly, it validated everything I'd been dealing with for months. Kevin was officially in the wrong, and I had the law on my side. But Kevin wasn't done making my life difficult. The next day, I received a letter from a lawyer claiming that I had violated Kevin's privacy rights by recording him without consent. The letter demanded that I destroy all video recordings and remove my security cameras, or face a lawsuit. I immediately contacted my own lawyer, who laughed when I showed him Kevin's legal threat. "This is completely baseless," my attorney told me. "You have every right to record activity on your own property. The fact that he's visible in the recordings is his choice. He's the one who decided to come onto your property." My lawyer sent a response letter explaining that Kevin had no legal grounds for his complaint and that any lawsuit would be frivolous and potentially subject Kevin to sanctions for filing false claims. The resolution, faced with a police citation, legal fees, and the reality that his behavior had been thoroughly documented, Kevin finally started keeping Brutus on his own property during walks. The change was immediate and dramatic. Instead of stopping in front of my house, Kevin now walks quickly past, keeping Brutus on a short leash and making sure he doesn't wander onto my yard. I still have the security cameras up, and I still occasionally catch Kevin glancing nervously at them when he walks by. But Brutus hasn't set foot on my property since the police visit. My yard is finally recovering from months of damage. I've replanted the destroyed flower beds, reseeded the damaged grass areas, and my landscaping is looking better than ever. The best part? Several neighbors have thanked me for dealing with the situation. Apparently, Kevin's entitled attitude had been bothering other people too, but I was the first one to actually do something about it. Mrs. Johnson told me, "I'm so glad you stood up to him. He's been acting like he owns the whole neighborhood since he moved in." The legal education. This whole experience taught me a lot about property rights and recording laws. I learned that you have the right to record anything visible from your own property. There's no expectation of privacy when someone is on your property or in public view. Most cities have ordinances requiring pet owners to clean up after their animals. Security cameras are completely legal when they're monitoring your own property. Threatening frivolous lawsuits can actually backfire and result in sanctions. I also learned that sometimes you have to be willing to document bad behavior to protect yourself. If I hadn't installed those cameras, it would have been my word against Kevin's, and he could have continued denying responsibility indefinitely. The ongoing situation. It's been about 3 months since the police visit, and the situation has remained stable. Kevin keeps his dog on his own property, and I haven't had to clean up after Brutus since. Kevin and I don't speak anymore, which is fine with me. He clearly resents being held accountable for his behavior, but that's his problem to deal with. The security cameras are staying up permanently. They've already paid for themselves by solving this problem, and they give me peace of mind about other potential issues. I've also become something of a neighborhood resource for people dealing with similar problems. 2 other neighbors have asked me for advice about documenting nuisance behaviors, and I've been happy to help. Lessons learned. This whole ordeal taught me several important lessons. First, some people will never be reasonable no matter how politely you ask them to change their behavior. Kevin had multiple opportunities to address this issue respectfully, but he chose to be confrontational and dismissive instead. Second, documentation is crucial when dealing with persistent problems. Without video evidence, this would have been an ongoing he said, she said situation with no resolution. Third, knowing your legal rights is important. I'm glad I researched recording laws before installing cameras, and I'm grateful my lawyer was able to shut down Kevin's frivolous legal threats. Fourth, sometimes you have to be willing to escalate a situation to resolve it. I tried polite conversations and reasonable requests, but ultimately I needed law enforcement involvement to get results. Finally, standing up for yourself often helps other people too. Several neighbors have thanked me for addressing Kevin's behavior, and the whole street seems more peaceful now. Final thoughts. Looking back, I wish I had installed security cameras sooner. Months of frustration and property damage could have been avoided if I'd documented Kevin's behavior from the beginning. But I'm proud of how I handled the situation. I stayed within my legal rights, collected undeniable evidence, and got the problem resolved without resorting to anything inappropriate or aggressive. Kevin learned that actions have consequences, and my property is finally safe from his dog's daily visits. The funniest part? Kevin now goes out of his way to avoid walking past my house. He takes a longer route around the block, rather than deal with the reminder of his defeat. Sometimes I see him glancing at my security cameras with a resentful expression, but he keeps walking. My yard has never looked better. My stress levels are back to normal, and I have peace of mind knowing that I can handle whatever challenges come my way. Sometimes you just have to stand up for yourself, even when it means dealing with someone who screams about privacy violations while standing in your driveway. Thanks for listening to my story. Have you ever had to deal with an entitled neighbor who refused to take responsibility for their actions? Let me know in the comments how you handled it, and whether security cameras helped solve your problem too.